Hey everybody, Sanavi here, and welcome to a quick video on what my plans are for the Legacy event starting tomorrow for PoE 1. So I was looking at ways that I could make Cyclone of Tumult work for the Legacy event, and after evaluating the ascendancies, I thought it would be a lot of fun to play a cold crit Cyclone version of the build. And so what we are going to be playing is Surfcaster. And the reason we're playing Surfcaster is we're going to be able to convert all of our physical damage into lightning damage, and then that lightning damage gets converted into cold damage, which then the cold damage can shock. We then also get reverse effective chill, which is really nice. We also get 15% less damage taken by chilled enemies, as long as we have that max chill effect on them, which we should. And then we also get increased damage done to chilled enemies. And then early on, the first ascendancy we'll be taking, which is probably the most powerful ascendancy in this version of the game, goes to the deep for just that flat movement speed, attack speed, and increased damage. So, looking at the build, let's first go over leveling. So for leveling, we're going to be pretty much non-crit using Resolute Technique through the campaign, which is pretty standard for a melee build. We're going to start off in the shadow area because Surfcaster is a shadow ascendancy. And some of the things that you're going to want to pick up early on is Leech for mana and life, as well as Instant. This is going to be our main form of recovery. You're also going to grab some elemental damage here and physical damage here. Later you'll pick up this mana reservation to help when we start stacking auras. You'll cross through the middle of the tree, and you're going to pretty much beeline for our Resolute Technique early on. And once you get that, you're going to get your Rage Generation and Intimidation, as well as extra mace damage. We're going to use an Oxer Bowl to generate endurance charges early on whenever we get hit, as well as pick up the extra endurance charge node here. And then we're going to grab just, two-hand damage here, two-hand damage and mace damage here, and more mana reservation here and here. Our skill setup while leveling is going to be pretty simple. I have a 4-link regular Cyclone with Pulverize, Shockwave, and Infused Channeling. And in the PoB, I've kept the gem levels low and non-quality to try to simulate what that would be like when you're getting out of the campaign. We're going to be using Cyclone as our clear ability and Frozen Legion as our boss bursting ability. So basically a take on Mathil's build from the current Settlers League. So you can see with no investment gear, just life and resistances, and a really low-end PDBS two-hander mace, our Cyclone is doing about a little over 500k damage coming out of the campaign, and our burst damage on Frozen Legion is almost 1.5 mil. And once again, this is with no gear and 70 something points on the tree. The only unique that you should grab early on is a Herm Sorrow. These should be pretty plentiful, and that's going to give us that physical damage converted to cold to take advantage of the Surfcaster ascendancy stuff. So that's pretty much it for leveling. Looking at the skills again, outside of our two main abilities, we're using Frost Bomb when we boss, as well as War Banner. We'll have Blood Rage while we're mapping. I don't have Frenzy charges turned on right now, but you can toggle those on to see, because mostly those will just be up for mapping. And then for our curse, we're going to be using Elemental Weakness while we're playing Resolute Technique while we're leveling. And then a Steel Skin for that assistance with EHP. And because we won't have Frostblink of Wintry Blast early on, we're going to use a Leap Slam for our movement ability while we're leveling. And then our auras are just going to be Hatred, Herald of Ice, Herald of Purity, and Herald of Ash. And that's pretty much it for leveling the build. As soon as we get into maps, we're going to be pushing to go crit as soon as possible. So I have a more endgame tree for a mid-game crit version of the build. So we're dropping pretty much this portion of the tree and coming up here, and we are making some slight changes. So at this point, we've picked up a pair of the Stampede boots, and we've swapped to Cyclone of Tumult. We've got our 6 link going. We've added increased critical strikes and melee damage onto it. And for our Frozen Legion, we've added on increased critical strikes and I believe LE damage. So on this setup, you can see that our Cyclone, if we turn off War Banner and Focus, our Cyclone does about 5.4 mil damage, and our Frozen Legion is doing about 11 million burst damage. But basically, when you get to a map boss at the end of a map, or you're doing like, a regular boss, you're going to pop your War Banner, you're going to pop Focus, drop Frost Bomb, and then you're going to pop Frozen Legion, which is going to be your boss ability. And you can see that's at like 23 million damage on this setup. And then if you're just like mapping and you come across a rare that's pretty tanky, you can pop your War Banner and your Focus, and you'll see your Cyclone is doing about 11 million plus damage. So pretty good damage on just a regular crit conversion. For our gear at this point, outside of picking up Stampede boots, we're going to be crafting a pretty okay 700 Fizz DPS two-hander mace. Things you're going to want on here is that Veil to deal double damage while focused, and we're going to be using a pretty cheap Settler's Enchanted Craft for that 30% of attack physical damage converted to lightning damage. So essentially, we'll have that on the mace, and we'll have gloves at this point that give us, the Eldritch Implicit for physical damage converted to lightning damage, as well as a crafted physical damage converted to lightning damage. So at this point, we won't be running Herm Sorrow anymore. We'll use these gloves and the enchant on the mace to pretty much get close to 100% Fizz damage conversion. It won't be really close. It's going to be like 75%, but this is still pretty early on with your gearing process. And that, once again, that lightning damage just gets converted to cold damage because of the Surfcaster ascendancy. For our skills, outside of our two main abilities at this point, we have moved to a mark on hit Assassin's Mark setup because we are now playing crit. And then we have a ring, which is giving us that curse enemies with elemental weakness on hit. Our anoints are going to be Whispers of Doom, so we can use those two curses or that curse mark, as well as Charisma on the neck, so that we get that extra mana reservation and non-curse aura effect. And then for the rest of your gear, you're just looking for life and resistances. You're going to want a decent chest that has Fizz damage reduction. So both the Eldritch Implicit to help with that, as well as the mod on the chest, just to help us out with our Fizz damage EHP. And then after the first unique you really want to buy that's going to require some investment will be the Stampede, so that we can use Cyclone of Tumult. But then you're going to want to look for a Lion's Roar, which shouldn't be too expensive. And then eventually you'll want a Bottled Faith. You'll use a Bottled Faith forever on this build, so it's going to be worth the investment. And then we're just going to stack jewels, life and crit multi jewels. If you can get attack speed, also that's ideal. And then if you need to use a jewel to help, like I'm doing in here to simulate, for instance, with the resistances, you can do that too. The way we're generating endurance charges once we go crit, because we are dropping inexorable, is we're going to use Enduring Composure on a small cluster jewel, and that's how we're going to generate our endurance charges going forward. So this version of the build right here, which is probably going to be some slight investment, especially with crafting the weapon and picking up like a Bottled Faith, this will pretty much be able to comfortably clear T16s. Pretty much anything out of anything except T17s and like Uber bosses, this version of the build should be pretty good on. Now I did put together a really high investment min-max version of the build. For this, the only noticeable changes are we are now using tattoos just to squeeze out some extra damage on the tree. The real changes come with the gear. So as you can see with this version of the build, our Cyclone, if we drop the War Banner and the Focus, our Cyclone is now doing about 16 million passive damage, and our Frozen Legion is doing almost 50 mil when we pop it on a boss. But once again, you're going to Banner, Focus, and then hit that Frost Bomb, and then hit your Frozen Legion, and you're going to have about 100 million DPS. When you're mapping, you won't have War Banner and Focus, but you'll be generating those Frenzy charges from Blood Rage, and you're going to have closer to 20 million just passive damage on your Cyclone. So that's what the numbers look like for this version of the build. For your items, you're going to have a really high-end two-handed mace, and we're going to be using the really good enchant from the King's March Settler stuff, which is the gain % of weapon fizz damage is extra damage of each element. This is an expensive crafted enchant. It requires, I believe, 4 power runes. So you're only gonna put this on like your best weapon. And I still have a pretty low PDS weapon here. You can craft something a lot higher, but once again, you're just looking for increased fizz damage, crit strike chance, and then you want to get that veiled mod for the deal double damage while focused. So that's what your weapon should look like. For our gear, we're just basically using better pieces of what we had before, so really high life and resistance rolls, especially on the chest. We want to squeeze out as much mitigation as possible. We are going to pick up a Circle of Guilt Ring with the Herald of Purity mods on here. So that will be another unique to invest in. But really, the most money outside of crafting a good weapon here is we're going to be running the Adorned with a bunch of Corrupted Magic Jewels, as well as a Progenesis. Progenesis is really like the last thing I recommend you picking up. Even without a Progenesis, we have decent EHP here. But if you're just able to farm currency really well, you can just play the game a lot. I recommend picking up a Progenesis because it's just a lot of extra mitigation. So we'll be running, like I said, the Adorned. You'll be using these Corrupted Jewels to help out with resistances and crit multi, or just like life and crit multi. And then for our skills, we're just using, better versions of what we already had. 2120 gems, some awakened. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. I think this build is going to be pretty comfortable throughout the whole league event. Leveling should be pretty smooth, especially with Ghosts of the Deep. I recommend for the Ascendancies picking up Ghosts of the Deep first, because you get all this free flat damage and movement speed. That's going to be huge for leveling through the campaign. And then once you pick up Ghosts of the Deep, I recommend getting Stormy Seas for the lightning damage converted to cold damage. Cold damage can shock. At this point, you should have been able to pick up a Herm Sorrow from trade. Or if you're playing like solo self-found, you can run like a Fizz to Lightning gem on your setup, so that way you can take advantage of the Surfcaster ascendancy. And then you'll go from Stormy Seas into, I believe it's going to be a Glacial Wave to get the extra mitigation and damage. So I think for leveling, it should be pretty comfortable. And then once you go crit, you'll just be blasting. Yeah, so I think on paper it looks good. A lot of this is going to change while I'm playing the character over the next several days, and I'll be posting some videos as updates to what that looks like. I won't be streaming because I'm currently, I've just moved, and I don't have reliable ISP to be able to stream content. But I do plan on posting a video sometime over the weekend to just kind of show the build in action, what it looks like, and how it's doing, and probably some heavily modified POVs. But I'll have this current one linked in the description if you guys want to play around with it. This is just my thoughts on a twist on what Mathil did, but also playing Tumult because I really like Tumult with the Stampede setup. And yeah, I'm looking forward to playing this. I'm looking forward to any suggestions or feedback from you guys. But yeah, I think this is going to be a banger. I think the event's going to be a lot of fun. And I'll see you guys next time.